Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Townhead podcast. It's season 4, episode 39. We are at the end of the year, and that can only mean one thing: that's season review. We're doing this a little bit different this time. Clearly, you can see this is not my kitchen, but we are joined by the usual panel. Going through today, we will have Daly. You're very welcome.
Cheers, Chris.
Steph.
Thanks, Chris.
All the way from, well, previous press box contestant or participant, but also, of course, local journalist with Everything Dundee Football Club's James Rogers. And a slight change to the upcoming team lineup. Donal Hanks is unavailable, but just to make sure we get that something from him, very warm welcome to Kieran Callan.
Thanks very much.
Gents, I suppose we want to have a look back on the season that was. But before we do that, in typical Dundalk FC fashion, they throw out another announcement this week. And of course, that is the fact that Kieran Kilduff is now our new first team manager. Gally, your thoughts on the appointment, the swiftness, I suppose, of that too?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. The pace of it kind of caught fire was probably the most surprising bit of it. It's someone we mentioned, I suppose, over a couple of weeks in the podcast. We mentioned a few names. As I don't just make anybody laughed after the way we mentioned names, but yeah, I mean, I was surprised. I was actually surprised in the read-up with him that he was only 36. So that even that in itself is a surprise candidate to get in for the job. But he's done great at the women's league, the women's national league. He's won the league with Athlone. He's got pedigree in coaching, as Pingu, his best mate back home in Chicago, will tell you. And he's got the pedigree for Dundalk football because he knows the club. He's played at the club. He's a history maker with the club as well. Could we have gone a different route? Yes. Could we possibly have mentioned one or two other players? But I mean, or two other former managers or ex-players. But I think for what we need, the fact that we dropped out the first one, whether or not he would have got the job if we were still Premier Division is a different story. But the fact that we need to kind of, there's a budget to be met. There's John Temple obviously and Peter Halpin obviously have a plan of doing this. Mm-hmm. They want a way of doing it. He's young. He's eager to get going. It is a surprise how quick it's happened. You're right. It is a 100% probably surprise. But I think after his interview with Keith Wallace today, I'm eager to get going and eager to see what he's going to produce for us. Yeah.
Steph, of course, he's a former opposition player to you, isn't that right?
Yeah, like obviously he done the interview the other day, and I totally forgot he played with Kildare County on that famous night. We all like to bring it up every so often, but yeah, it was just surprising. Like I totally forgot he played with them. I know he'd a great career. He obviously went to UCD, Shamrock Rovers. Obviously had a great spell with us, like, and everything he's done since. But yeah, like Gally said, I think it was very surprising how quickly it was done. You always hear wee whispers around the town of he's coming in, he's not coming in, and you know you sort of, our experience now is just to hang back and not make a fool of yourself to say, oh yeah, he's someone that signed, until it's actually done and announced. So yeah, like, look, I think I'm more excited about it than anything else. I think I'd been speaking about, you know, getting a young, hungry manager in, someone that's gonna cut his teeth, as they say, in the game. And you know, he probably has a blank canvas to work from, to be honest with you. So I think it's in his own hands what he wants to do with it. It will be interesting to see who he gets on board as part of the coaching staff. We'll be keeping an eye on flights from Chicago to see if our good friend Pingu is going to come across, because I don't think he hasn't told anybody that he done the A licence with his mate Killer. So, but yeah, look, it'll be exciting to see the announcements coming through. He's obviously, you know, Dervin's obviously been agreed to stay as well, and one or two other names. So look, hopefully the positive news keeps rolling in, because I think it is a positive move. I'm just probably surprised that it's been done so quickly, but happy it's that way, rather than, you know, it hanging over our heads, seeing who's going to come in or not.
James, when you've got your ear so close to the ground, I'm sure you heard umpteen names have come across you. Did Kieran, was that an early name that you heard about, or did it come out of left field for you?
No, it's funny. John Temple obviously did the interview a couple of weeks ago where he spoke, and I think most people have probably heard it or read about it or whatever, but in that he did deny speaking to Kieran Kilduff. Now, he hadn't spoke to him at that stage, but I think very shortly after that he did reach out. So I'm led to believe the club did sort of look at a few options and maybe 4 or 5 names on that, but I do think Kilduff was the number one choice that they came to. The investors in America, I believe, were involved in that. They've spoken to him as well. So it's great that there's decisive action, I think, because I think and look, we're going to go through it shortly, but if there was a criticism maybe of the club going back a few years, we were too slow in pre-season to get things going, whereas it's refreshing that at least, I know there's off the field stuff maybe hanging over the club, but you're in a situation where you have a manager in place, he's already spoken to players, he's already tied down, as Steph said, you know, Dervin today, spoken to Darrell, confirmed he would be there, etc. So we're at least motoring from that perspective, whereas in the past, you know, we were into New Year and nothing done. So at least we're balls rolling, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, look, as I mentioned, we are definitely not in our normal houses. We are here in situ in Black Mountin Studios, and a big thanks to Mark Carlin for giving us these facilities here tonight. So we are right at the top, looking back down over Dundalk Bay right now. We're going to have a real special episode, I suppose, today. We wanted to keep things themed with Dundalk FC as much as we can. We have all the lads in here. We thought who better than current Dundalk FC captain John Mountney to be joining us. He will be here in the second half of the show. And in between that, we will have a real special music interlude from Dundalk's very own David Keenan. Lads, let's get into it. Let's look back on this season that was. Gally, we sat down episode 1 like we always do, and we're comparing and contrasting names and who's going to play in what positions and stuff like that. Did you feel that the team was strong enough to compete? Did you think we were slightly undercooked? What was your evaluation of the squad at that stage?
Well, I'm part of the team that said we might win the league when peak six, when Giovanni had the job, but I don't think, it's not that what the worry with the start of the season was, and it was the same last year, like James had mentioned, we got going late. We got signings in really late, and look, that's because whatever financial constraints, whatever takeover, we know that all came out later in the year, but we are notorious for going late in the year. We're looking for players. You look at someone like Jack Johnson who signed like days. The season was just days and hours away. We Zach Bradshaw in late as well. But I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I kind of thought we'd struggle to get anywhere near top 3, but I didn't think we obviously weren't prepared for what we would struggle with. Any new players coming in are going to take a while to get going. But as we probably mentioned, the first game of the season, obviously, that kind of dawn, that game against Rovers it definitely gave us a bit more hope than we were expecting. But as normal, as James had mentioned, Dundalk tend to get going really late in the season for signings, and we've been that way for the last 2 or 3 seasons. So you have to be apprehensive because players coming in on loan, not knowing the league. We did have a bit of pedigree there, like John, Stephen signed these boys back, Robbie Benson, all these players are in, and they're the core of the team. But when you take a couple of young fellas in from well, not I was going to say American, back to Peak 6, England, you don't know what you're going to get. Now, obviously, we've got some fantastic players in Zach Johnson, but at the time, apprehension set in because we would have struggled, not knowing what we would have struggled with. But until the first game of the season, whatever's happened after, but definitely the first game of the season, we thought definitely as a group we felt, and I definitely felt that we were definitely capable of, on our day, of playing the best teams. The problem was that all these players had to be gelled together. It looked like we had 40 players at one stage. And that's a real problem when you're trying to galvanise the team together. But I think we signed some really good players, as we'll talk about, and players that unfortunately had to go back. But I think we got off to a decent, okay start, but the apprehension of signing players like that is always in the back of your mind, especially for someone, even with the experience of Stephen O'Donnell, Bonesy on the sideline, it's really difficult. You've got Garth doing recruitment as well, so it's typical Dundalk probably at the start of the season. You're worried, but you're never fearful of what we'll talk about later on.
Steph, did you feel like when we got to the end of last year, we knew there was positions that we needed to be strengthened in? When we had lost Nathan Shepherd, we were looking for a keeper. It seemed like we were trying everything to get the right keeper in.
Yeah, it just seemed like, it was just the unknown of it again. And that was the trouble. It seemed like we were in Groundhog Day where we were back in the same place. It was like just starting again. It was like a new manager coming in and building his own team again, except obviously it was a manager from the previous season. Stevie obviously was still there, but to have to rebuild the squad, get your own ideas across, and then for that to all gel together, it was just you're asking for too much every single time. But the goalkeeping position on, even if you take that individually by itself, I think Shelby was signed possibly a day or two before the Rovers game. So Monroe's played the Malone Cup game and obviously didn't have the best of times. I think he made a couple of errors possibly. We lose the game and you're sort of thinking, his confidence is going to be really low. A new keeper comes straight in and jumps ahead of him in the pecking order. So look, that wouldn't have done his confidence any good. Then Shelby obviously give us the false dawn of looking like he was going to be a world beater in the Rovers game.
He picked himself up for it too.
Yeah, and look, even if you just skip forward a couple of games to the Sligo Rovers game, and I was up in the stand that night and someone happened to have a match programme, and they showed it to me at halftime, and he was speaking about, you know, coming over to win leagues, and
That's right.
you know, like, well, 5 or 6 games in, he's like, look, you'd have to admire his confidence coming over to a league that I assume he doesn't have much knowledge of at the time. But you know, if you're just a young kid trying to make your name in the game, like, just focus on your game and let that do the talking, instead of, you know, talking up a title charge. But yeah, I suppose going back to what you said originally, long-winded, yeah, the uncertainty of everything, and you know, us not having a clue, having to look up Google, YouTube, whatever you have in front of you to try and look at these keepers. Where, you know, we had Gary Rogers for how many years, and you know what you get with guys like, so
Yeah.
it's total contrast in the two, like, which is tough.
James, if I mention the names that we've let go coming into that season, Hooban, Kelly, Sloggett, Martin, Malley, Wardy, Leahy, Senna Mullen obviously gone, Nathan Shepherd, that, like, a lot of them are stalwarts within the league. That's extremely hard to replace. And then when you're thinking, you've got loan signings in the two, Zach's, Kieran McGuckin, of course, was there at that stage as well. We didn't get to see too much of that. Scott High, I think, was the other loanee at the time. So did you feel we were replacing stalwarts within our team and within the league with loan signings and hoping that they were going to be able to replace that quality?
Well, to be fair, like, some of it was out of our control, in that I think Daniel Kelly was out of contract and saw an opportunity in Derry. It was probably financially better for him and stuff like that, so you can't do anything about that. I think John Martin made his mind up that, again, he was going to go up the road. I think the club did want to keep him. It's proven a good decision for him, to be fair. The likes of Greg, I suppose that was very much a personal decision, but again, you're losing someone who knows the league and is a bit of a heartbeat of your team. So you're losing sort of core players, you know, through your middle there. But like, some of it was, for me, massively self-inflicted as well. Like, I mean, you mentioned the goalkeeping situation there. It was, I feel it got personal, maybe not with Nathan, but with people representing him and people standing off against it. Nathan was actually back in Dundalk, people forget. Just
I remember the tweet going up, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he was in for a coffee in town.
And like, anyone who ever met Nathan Shepherd would tell you he's a good kid, you know. And because Peter Cherry was obviously leaving the club at the time as well, I didn't feel you needed to get rid of him. If you felt you could better him and get a new number one in, I said by all means. But even the keeper situation, so we would have looked at George Shelby before signing Ross Monroe and decided Ross Monroe was our guy. He made a mistake, as Steph mentioned, in the Malone Cup, and then we revisit the situation and signed George Shelby anyway to effectively replace the guy we've just signed to be our number one. And it was that sort of decision making that I felt just, it didn't set us up for, shall we say, just, you know, steadiness. And look, you mentioned people like Dara Leahy, and you know, there's times where I think most Dundalk fans would have said, you know, maybe he lacks a bit of pace or whatever, but again, if you're going to replace someone like that, it has to be an improvement. And when you bring in Jamie Walker, I mean, there's no evidence that was an improvement. Dara had quite a good season at Waterford on the whole, you know. So those key decisions, I feel we got most of them wrong. But the big one was obviously like Patrick Hoban, where, you know, he's our record goal scorer and he's in contract, and it's up to him and Stephen O'Donnell to maybe, if they ever go public on what exactly happened. But the bottom line is we didn't have to lose him. And like, you're keeping a guy in, with all due respect to him, and Cammy Elliott, who showed no evidence in his debut season that he could get goals in this league. Like, by all means, I think bringing the likes of a Jamie Gullen in would have been welcomed as well. But for me, you know, when you get rid of your goalkeeper who was steady, when you get rid of your striker who contributed goals and assists and was a leader in your dressing room, on top of everything else, I think it was a mad old window. And then things that you missed out on as well, like we would have tried for someone like Franz Pirro, for example, who Brian Ainscough actually coached in America. And there was that link, but it was too late, you know. And there was a similar story with that in the summer then, when we tried for Shane Farrell, too late. He'd already agreed to go to Drogheda. And they're two players who effectively helped them stay up and are in a cup final this weekend. You know, so little things like that. We were just, some of it was out of the management teams and sporting director and stuff control, but others, I think, we shot ourselves in the foot one too many times, I think.
Yeah, just a reminder as well, I suppose we will, all your comments that we would normally address, and me and Gally would normally bring in, I suppose, throughout the show. So Kieran will be able to stay across them. So keep sending them in. We may have a prize for one of the best comments later on the show from that as well. So if you keep the comments coming in, it's not that we are ignoring them tonight, but Kieran will go through. Kieran, what's, I suppose, people's response online so far?
The response online has been very good, but just somebody is commenting on Steph's attire this evening. So apparently he scrubs up very well, and still got his confirmation gear. So,
And the money as well.
and the
Is that the missus?
I can't comment.
So looking for me money, I think.
I suppose if people keep sending in their comments anyway throughout this, obviously, if you have any questions for our panel as we go through the season that was, if anyone wants to make any opinion on any of that, and questions for John Mountney when he comes in the second half, people are more than welcome to comment in on that. I'll come to you next, Steph, because you're looking so well then.
Thank you very much.
Gally's mentioned it. The 1-1 draw in Tallaght had us all kind of brimming with optimism for the season ahead. We think of the fabulous free kick in that. I remember Mayo in particular having a real standout game in that. But the next two home games after that kind of brought us back down with a bang. The 2-0 defeat to Galway, I think it was a game that we were never really in. It was very comfortable. It could have been a lot more for Galway. But then the next home game was that 5-0 defeat by Sligo, and it just seemed like anything that could go wrong in that match went wrong.
Yeah, like, you're sitting there at half-time hoping it was full-time, really. Anything that could have went wrong did go wrong. I think Sligo just had set up really well. They set traps for us constantly. They've obviously done the homework in the first two games. John Russell's obviously done his homework, and they've really done a number on us. I don't know if they caught us cold or it was just everything that seemed to go against us went against us. Everything that seemed to go well for them just hit goal. Like, so yeah, there was a couple of glaring I don't know if you'd say alerts, but obviously a couple of people got taken off at half time. The goalkeeper and the left back, and we struggled to see them much after that. We seen the keeper coming back into it, but yeah, like you're sort of in disbelief, as if to say, is this, we're waiting to be pranked here? Somebody's going to jump out and say we're going to blow the whistle again and we're going to start the game really this time. It was unbelievable to be honest with you. There was a lot of disbelief around, but that's. Alarm bells really started ringing then, and saying, this season mightn't just be smooth sailing, I suppose.
Gary, I'm thinking on to the next few fixtures, and it was kind of starting to become clearly obvious, something that James touched on earlier on. The lack of goals seemed to be something that was coming up again and again with us. We struggled to score against Waterford then, I think, after that as well. Was that going to be, that kind of started to feel like that was going to be the story of the season?
Like, there was nothing sure. There was nothing as glaringly obvious, apart from, I think we did Maxi on at the end of McGuill Street around the Galway game.
The Galway match, yeah.
And that was the first time, in particular the Sligo match, that was the first time I kind of thought, this is going to be a long season. Because we didn't, like Steph says, we got a sniff of nothing against Sligo. And I actually thought in parts of the games against Galway, we played worse. And Galway could have punished us more. Yeah. And the Galway went on to have a very good season. Sligo decent as well. Look, compared to us, everybody had a decent season. But that's when the alarm bell started to ring. There was kind of games after that we kind of thought, right, we're a wee bit here. We got a bit of a buzz in midfield. Mayo was having a great season. Fullbacks, but right fullbacks doing okay. We'll talk to them later. But that kind of issue with goals, like how many times did we start a podcast and the first comment, you might have got one tonight here, and we're not even playing, there might have been a comment the goal scored tonight. It was always the goals, the lack of goals, the lack of chances created for goals. Because we said that 1-1 false down, Gullen, outstanding. He went on to have a really good game against Pats later in the season as well. He was outstanding again, but there were just too few and far between. Like James said, we didn't want to, Donald will probably shoot us for mention, we didn't want to mention Pat Hooban, but it is a glaringly obvious whatever issues gone on. But like James said, Cammy Elliott staying on didn't set the world alight last year. We've got young Owen Kenny as well, but wasn't really getting a rub at the green at the start of the season. But Gullen, we thought, was going to be electric because he looked a poacher, he looked a proper goal scorer. But it seemed to be a lack of chances created for him. But then, as we talk about, as the season went on, any chance he got, he wasn't scoring. He just seemed to have that. Everything just seemed to be a little bit out of reach for him. He suffered a bit of injury, hamstring injury, but everything just seemed to be that little bit too quick for him. I don't know if he asked a tough pitch. I don't really know what the situation was, but I do think there's a player in there. He's been linked with another club, and he's Bows, the latest one. But I do think he could set the world alight in the League of Ireland if he gets going. But it just didn't click for whatever reason at all this season. Goals from midfield, Rhino Kane, like Darrell Hogg, and any of these players that come in, we never got going for goals. It's just, and it's all right not good scoring if you're not giving teams a head start on the far end of the field. And it was a combination. Our midfield was okay at times, but that combination of not being able to put the ball in the back of the net, it's the basic things of football. But then conceding schoolboy goals at the back, and that just sets you up for disaster. Galway, Sligo, and the fixtures that conceded after that, that's when we really started. Captain Positivity here wasn't showing up on the podcast. Just wasn't getting going. But goals, this season below, and it's not the lack of goals. It's like James said, because we let the best of the best go. We didn't think it was going to go back to haunt us as it did, but that absolutely set us up for the whole season then, of just that lack of firepower up top.
James, a run of 8 games into the season, and we were still struggling for form. I presume you were at the Brandywell that night, which ended up being Stephen O'Donnell's final game as manager. 4-1 defeat. I think it was Will Patchin had a real good match in that one too. Did you get a sense going into that match that if this didn't go well for him, this could be the end, or was it a sense of surprise?
No, I think going up there, you kind of knew it was make or break. And then whatever about surviving a defeat, it couldn't be a heavy defeat, and it was. It probably didn't shock me then when the hammer fell on us, and it was very hard because, you know, me who would be dealing with him week to week, like, you've so much respect for Stephen O'Donnell, both as a person. You know, he was a great captain for this club, and you know, he was very good to us in terms of even in his role as manager. And it was only his first season was sort of dreamland stuff where you're right back in Europe and that, and you're having to be. And I'm sure, look, you guys were doing it as well in terms of the podcast. You don't like criticising them, and you want it to really work out from the same way. Listen, regardless of who's the manager, you want it to work out. But when it's someone like Kilduff now that you kind of have a bit of connection to, you wanted that little bit extra. I know there's players in the dressing room. I'm sure John Mountney will talk about it later. But like, they really, really wanted it to work for him. But I just felt that maybe, and to reflect on that whole part of the season, we had a sort of rough end to the previous year where, I mean, I think Daly was mentioning it before we came on air, the Galway defeat in the cup and stuff like that, going back to the previous. And I wondered, did it maybe, because you forget, he mentioned Kilduff being 36. Stephen O'Donnell's not an old man either. He's not that much, years in the game. And did he overthink it? Because I know we mentioned the Hoban thing, but there was this strategy, rightly or wrongly, in his head where he wanted to play a little bit different. He wanted to play a more counter-attacking style, and it didn't emerge. I mean, we didn't actually score this season in Oriel under Stephen O'Donnell. So, as I say, goals was a massive, massive problem. So, and look, needless to say, you don't score goals, you don't win matches. But yeah, going back to your question about Brandywell, it did kind of feel like the end, and it's very hard to come back from that. And it was hard to defend it either, where we were going at that point, because you just felt, where's the turning point? And at that point, maybe someone else had to give it a go.
Yes. Kieran, a couple of comments coming in online?
Yeah, just one that's come in, just that, the Sligo game summed up the transfer window after 3 games. Shelby didn't come out of the second half. He was substituted. Walker didn't make 35 minutes into that game, and that was the last time he featured in a competitive match. So that kind of summed up the frustrations pretty much at the beginning of the season. And then another comment came in just saying, we kept a lot of clean sheets in a row, but picked up minimal points, for a win here or there. If we had a striker towards the end of the season, we probably could have, squeezed out of it if we created, because we were creating 4 to 5 good chances towards the back end of the season per game. But nobody to notch the ball in the back of the net. So there's kind of a frustration, you know, particularly at the beginning of the season and the end of the season, whereby, you know, the start of the season we weren't creating chances and we weren't getting opportunities in goal, and we were goal starved. And then maybe in the second half under John that we were starting to create chances, but the strength of our front line was nowhere near what we needed. And if we had kept, say, for sake of argument, at home, and we might have gotten out of the relegation bother.
Steph, so unfortunately we've lost Stephen O'Donnell now, and I suppose the big question that came out of that was, okay, fine, but who are you replacing with? It turns out there was no immediate replacement, and Burnsy and Garth had to step in, got a credible 0-0 draw in Oriel Park and a narrow 1-0 defeat. I think where Robbie Mann came on and actually played really well in that game too. And I believe, would that have been one that Owen Kenny came in later on in that game and had a big chance maybe to get an equaliser?
Yeah.
But I think we were all kind of wondering where we were going. You know, if you're going to sack your manager, you need to have a replacement. But it looked like we didn't have that plan just yet.
Yeah, and look, James already said it. It sort of, it didn't. There was no like knee-jerk reaction where a manager just sacked. It was sort of building up, and then obviously with that heavy defeat in the Brandywell, then, you know, Stevie's let go. So, you know, you're half sort of expecting them to, you know, at least be preparing a few names that they might reach out to see if they're interested in the role. But yeah, like, I don't know if fortune's just sort of changed a wee bit, that they sort of said, you know, we'll just let Burnsy and Garth steady the ship. I don't know what the thinking was there, but yeah, like you saw a bit of an upturn. We were hoping for a manager's bounce and hopefully get a few wins, and then, you know, a new manager can come in then and lift it again. But yeah, it's a difficult one. Obviously the boys were, you know, involved. Burnsy was on the coaching staff at the time with Stevie. Obviously Patrick Craig left as well, so Garth stepped up to help as well. So yeah, look, it lifted us a little bit, but like the same questions were still being asked. You know, where the goal's going to come from. If we concede first, we're in massive trouble because we're probably going to lose a game. So yeah, we might have got a few token trophies like that. You know, people are saying, oh, performances maybe have improved a little bit since Stevie went, but yeah, it wasn't the 3 points that we were sort of hoping to gain for a couple of games.
Gally, it's only when you start going through the season you realise how many pillars we're going to actually have to come to in this. I'm gonna ask you this first, James, or Gally, but I'm gonna have to come to you, James, for the end of this, because I think you know where we're going. We go over west to Sligo, we get a credible 1-1 draw, and we go live that night, and in the comments it starts filtering through. We were talking about rumours of who could come in as manager, and then Noel King's name starts popping up. James, I think I even tried ringing you midway through the show at one stage, and I'm sure your phone was hopping off that. But Gally, I'll come to you first and then yourself after, James. Like a credible draw, but what happened after and how we got appointed, it seems crazy now, but after the way this season's gone.
Yeah, I still remember that I produced that night, and I think myself and Donal were having this conversation. I remember it was the same people, a lot of people would be similar comments, but it was Gavin McKeever had commented in, and then I think it might have been, I don't know, it was Rory Gilson or something else, somebody that'd be on Twitter had this, you know, King had started, and I think, well, there must be a different, like, it couldn't be, it's not the same fella, because, like, you know, he left Shelburne the year before the ladies team, and look, nothing wrong with that. He's done tremendous work. He's been in FEI for years as well, coaching. And like David Lennon had commented as well. This started gathering pace, and as Donal was on the subject of the match, I happened to just turn on, because I put my phone on, and just Twitter had just, like, it had lit up like nothing else. Like, I could see the battery draining from my phone. And I think I texted you on your WhatsApp.
I think I was coming back from Bray that night, wasn't I?
Just find this out. You on the M1. Said, just find this out. Maybe text Reggie being the one in the know. Said, just text just to see. But then Gavin McKeever put up a ticker tape saying, yeah, it's confirmed. Check Twitter. So the whole show became about. So we literally created this ticker tape that went across the bottom. And like, even as I was typing it,
it's like, this can't be right.
This is just absolute bonkers. Now look, Brian Ainscough goes back to the home farm situation. And look, they've got that connection. maybe he wanted a man motivator. That's what we kind of went with. Bonesy was still on the sideline for the first couple of Bonesy and Garth were there. I could kind of get on board with a man motivator, a team that's been down in the doldrums for the last couple of months. I just think he got the wrong person at the time. It was like universal, just no. I mean, like, they're willing to, look, the Dog fans, they know the score, they'll give everybody a chance.
Yeah.
But I think that particular appointment, especially with the Zane's Cup and everything going on, you know, and I think it all, and we still, every night, we still get comments in, this is the chairman that let Pat Hubin go, this is, you know, this kind of crowd. It all come back to that. And that anger kind of set in that night. And from that night,
I think that was nearly the record views on.
It really was.
I think we were up to like 800 people watching live.
It completely shot up. Like, people coming home from the game, and I think we ran till at least midnight, after midnight. Anyway, I don't know what it was. It was probably an hour show, but we went a good bit, and it was just absolute. It was just repetitive. Just what is going on? What is this?
Yeah.
And we were crying. I remember kind of settled, trying to balance it a wee bit, saying, well, man, motivation. He's got experience. He might know the players. But I mean, and look, in fairness to him, his first game in Oriel Park, James will mention as well, we got off the flyer. But you just knew it wasn't going to be fun. You just knew it. Like, he got an 18-month contract, if I remember as well, which was not even till the end of the season. It was, you know, James will obviously talk a bit better on that, but it was crazy times. Like, probably like peak 6X-esque.
Yeah.
But kind of not at the level you were looking for. No, man motivation, absolutely, but not what we needed at the time, no.
James. I remember you texting me to kind of confirm what I was hearing, but you said you can't answer the phone because, one, the reception is so bad over here, and two, there's just constant phone calls coming in.
Yeah, there was. There's a place coming out of Sligo called, I think it's called Kulani or whatever, and it's really dark, narrow, windy roads. And the context of that, so we had just played Sligo, obviously, and chatting to Garth afterwards, and you're asking him about the game and even, you know, any word on a manager because he was involved in the process. And that finished anyway, and we're leaving the showgrounds, and Tom O'Connor texted me, actually. I was just going to the toilet, you know, before you get in the car or whatever, and he's like, Noel King, and I thought, and I know Tom doesn't drink or anything, I'm like, this man's on one or whatever, you know, because if you had to give me odds, it wouldn't have been, it's like the Eamon Dunphy for the Ireland manager job. It's one of the joke bets. So hopped in the car and, you know, quickly set about trying to figure it out. It was the weirdest drive home from Sligo ever, because normally, well, sometimes I'd be with someone in the car anyway, but if I'm on my own, you're listening to podcasts or you listen to a Spotify or whatever.
Or the town end.
It didn't, and I do. But
Saying that now.
the phone literally didn't. It was blowing up, and just trying to firstly confirm it and then get your head around it. It was so left field. I think it was like 20 years since he'd managed in the league, and like, when you bear in mind at the time, there was an offer in to Stephen Kenny that he hadn't actually turned down. He had spoken to Keith Long, I think, maybe earlier that day or something, or the day before. And both, you can see the merits of both of them.
Yeah.
You know, Keith Long, former league winner with the club, managing in the league, etc., knows it very well. Don't think anyone saw this one coming. And to be fair, and it's one you'd love to. There's a lot of things you'd like to ask Brian Ainscough, obviously, but it's the one you'd really like to, because I remember I did speak to him after the Bows game, but it was very hard to be maybe critical of the appointment then, because you just won your first game of the season. But yeah, it was a bizarre period, and I can only imagine how the players felt, because you had. I remember again leaving the showgrounds that night, and I think one of the last players I seen getting on the bus was Mayo, who I think he only turned 21 in August, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, the last time Noel King managed in the league, Maya was, I don't even know, was he out of the womb yet? So they, like, whereas we know Noel King, I'm wondering, do a lot of those players have to literally Google him to see who he is?
Yes.
Now, there's nothing wrong with that. We probably did that with Filippo and stuff like that, and that was another mad appointment, to be fair. But it just made no logical sense, and it was very rushed at a time when, to be fair to Garth and Burnsy in that period, and subsequently, it's later on, but like, Burnsy probably got us our best result of the season, the 1-0 win over Rovers and Oriel. It was going okay. I didn't feel it needed that sort of rash. Burnsy said he didn't want the job. Garth said he didn't want the job, but when something's working for you, you roll with it till it maybe stops.
Doesn't,
being
yeah.
effective. And that night in Sligo, we actually got a 1-1 draw where I think it was the first time that season we'd come from behind to take anything from a game.
Yeah.
So that in itself was progress. So to go from, bit of progress to looking at Stephen Kenny and Keith Long as options to Noel King, I don't get how we got from there to here, sort of thing.
Steph, James has touched on it there. Noel's first game, but I think he always gave credit to Burnsy and Garts for the victory over Bows, a 2-0 win, and I think we got a 0-0 draw with Pats maybe soon after. It looked like things could be going well, but in particular the defeat in Drogheda, and I remember that 2-1 defeat that Can scored the last minute winner against us, and I think Noel's post-match comments that night when asked, defeat but a thriller of a game, and I think he said, must have been great for the neutrals watching. There's no neutrals in a Louth derby. Let's make that abundantly clear. Yeah. And to come out on the bad side of a last-minute winner, it was probably poor from him, and I think that was a real maybe turning point with some of the fans, that maybe Noel doesn't get the club that much, or maybe he's just not as in, all in that we'd like a manager to be.
Yeah, talk about not reading a room, like. But yeah, look, I don't want to be disrespectful here, but Noel was probably a bit out of touch with what was going on at the time. Obviously, he said it himself in the interviews. It totally came out of left field. He got an interview, or he got a phone call to say would he be interested. Mm-hmm. And next of all, he's appointed, and he's coming in saying he doesn't know any of the players' names. He was taking a back seat for a week or two just to get up and running with things. Like, we didn't have the time to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If a manager is coming in to stamp his authority on it, he needs to hit the ground running, or at least, get in amongst it, have a feeling for it. But you were looking at that Drogheda game in United Park, and you're just sitting watching Noel King sit on a seat while Liam Burns and Brian Gartland are discussing tactics and what they should do.
There was nearly a thing of waiting to see when he actually got up out of the dugout. People were watching, going, "Has he got out of the dugout yet?"
Yeah.
And that was a real worrying sign.
Yeah, it was just bizarre, the whole situation that was going on. You were just thinking there was something badly amiss here, and like Ali said, even if you had have given him a 9-month contract or something, just to see, if he could progress in the role, and then you could say, right, we'll give him another season or two as a contract, but just to give him the 18, I think there was nobody more surprised than himself. When you were looking at his interviews when he got announced, it was
like Christmas morning.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even he was totally surprised by it, and it just didn't inspire confidence for me anyway. And a lot of people was asking questions, so I think they were justified.
Yeah. As I say, Gally, the results probably turned a little, a 4-1 defeat down in Waterford kind of really spelled the end to Noel. It's a pity it didn't work out. It was really, I suppose, on health reasons. I think he said he was stepping away from the club. We knew we were in a bad position. I think James has mentioned it already. Burnsy was back at this stage. Garth had stepped away from the club as well. So Burnsy comes in, and we get that 1-0 win, which happened to be, of course, John Mountney's winner that night, which was nicely timed for today's show. So did we think that was, although James has mentioned and Burnsy had said that he didn't want to step into the breach, but would you have been happy if he had have?
Oh, absolutely. I think we went through a couple of shows talking about it. I think Burnsy strikes you the type of person that probably wouldn't put himself forward, but if asked, or if it was warranted, or if he got an 18-month contract or a 9-month contract, he would have absolutely done it, because he has that grow for the town. He's been embedded in Dundalk. What are we talking? Sean Connor, what year is that, Reggie? 2008, 2009. What year are we talking about? That's how long he's been. He's been youth coach. He's been, such a connection. He lives locally. He's everywhere. He's promoted. He was doing the promotion officer as well. That our mate in Chicago used to do as well. But he was embedded in the town, and I think everybody wanted him to get the job. Not that, they didn't want him, getting into the job and expecting just to turn around overnight. I think they just genuinely wanted someone like Burnsy and Garth, that combination, to just work at it. Because I think, we can talk about the managers that have come in, but there could have been a bit of a run there. There had been maybe given another half a dozen games, 4 or 5 matches. We don't really know what could have happened there. You know, like that kind of. We're talking about Noel King, maybe brought in for his man management, but the lads would have the year of the boys. You know, John will mention it when he comes on maybe, but when you're in, you got that connection. Gareth's a former player, more recently than Burnsy, obviously. Gareth has won the league recently with Kenny. You know, that kind of having that kind of stature amongst your coaches. And Stephen O'Donnell, look, we're not to hammer him as well. He's been through it all. He's, you know, coached these lads. But I think if we had left it for a couple of games, maybe half a dozen. You know, now whether look, half a dozen is a long time in football, but I think they absolutely could have got a few more points that we weren't expecting. But there was that bit of an upshift. We weren't battering teams, you know, but we were still that team where teams were always going to get a chance against us. They hadn't sorted that out. But I definitely think they could have been the one from the fans that we would have got us from comments that, or even now, before Kilduff got the job, Burnsy was always mentioned getting the job, but he wanted. But yeah, I definitely think an error was probably made in the appointment of the manager with them, but I think we definitely could have left them for another couple of matches just to see what would have happened. I don't think, so here we are now talking about, the next podcast we do after this is First Division. So, you know, what another 3 or 4 matches would have done. So it just, look, it's a sliding doors probably, but I definitely think the one from the fans was Burnsy at the helm with Gareth at the time, yeah.
James, I don't mean to keep coming back to you as there's another manager appointed. It just seems to be flowing this way. John Daly coming in, he came in at a very awkward time where I suppose we've mentioned that Padge Craig had gone, now Garth had gone. We were struggling to even have staff members really to coach. And I think when John came in, he wasn't really ready for that Galway match, but he realised how tight we were for coaching staff. And I kind of wanted to come in and stand on the sideline and show some sort of face. I suppose it can't have been easy for him coming in, but was that once again an appointment you were expecting?
Not really. Well, I got word of it maybe a few hours before it broke, but I mean, it was probably, it was very quick, I suppose, in terms of how it all came about. He'd only, I think, 16 days earlier lost his job. I think most people welcomed it after the madness of the previous appointment or whatever. And look, he'd won a cup with Pats and he knew the league, so ticked boxes in many ways. Don't think many people would have known much about him in terms of in Dundalk. We knew him as a Pats man, but probably very few people would have spoke to him or whatever. But I think on the whole was a welcome appointment just to have someone in there to sort of steady the ship. You mentioned the Galway game. Burnsy was actually suspended for that, and
that's right.
I think, I can't remember who it was. It was members of the youth staff over there and stuff as well. I think Dave Mackey was potentially going to be on the line and stuff like that. So I think when he got there and realised, you know, maybe if Burnsy hadn't been suspended and one of those unfortunate things, he probably wouldn't have maybe, you know, sat in the stand, take it in, but it probably needed a bit of direction. And he did make a couple, I think if I'm not mistaken, we three centre halves that night, which wouldn't be our norm in general, and he made change. I think Mayoa come off at half time, change his shape a bit. So it probably, I remember writing about it afterwards, it probably was a good assessment of where our problems were for him, because I think Ross Monroe punched one into his own net that night. We had chances that we didn't take. Again, sloppy goals given up, and it was just sort of right. These are the problems. You've seen it now. Now your challenge is go fix it. And unfortunately, we probably getting ahead, because you did have a brief period at the beginning which was decent, but those sort of problems dogged us right through.
Yeah, Steph, James just mentioned it. He came in and there was an upturn in results. I'm definitely thinking of that 3-2 victory over Pats away from home on Virgin Media that day. Kind of stands out as one you were kind of thinking this there could be something in this, and a 4-2 victory in a Loud Derby back at home, you're kind of thinking, hang on, if there could be something to build on. But the way Dundalk season is going, there's a caveat after, because I think the big question after that was, are we going to bet to lose our loan signings? If we do, how are we going to replace them? That was that Drogheda 4-2 victory was probably a real sliding doors moment for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, I think, you know, for 2-3 games running up to the July window, we were starting to ask questions. You know, are the players going to be retained until the end of our season? And then we obviously knew some of them had really impressed, like Zach Johnson and Zach Bradshaw had been excellent for us. We'd already lost, I think, Scott High He went back, he got injured, and McGuckin got injured as well, which cut short their time. We seen the glimpses of Scott High, and he'd really impressed early in the season, and then he'd been dogged by a few injuries, and obviously we hadn't seen McGuckin really at all. A few cameos here and there, and just when he got a run in the team, he seemed to go in an international break and get injured, unfortunately. But yeah, like if we're talking about it amongst ourselves on the podcast, it should have been glaringly obvious that these are main players in our team, and it was a reoccurring theme. Coming to the end of the last season, we were losing some core players, some big players in the squad, and it's the same thing happening, except it's midway through the season. So obviously the boys themselves have their own aspirations. They were going back to their parent clubs, but we were sort of holding out the hope that, the way a couple of years ago Lewis McCarry ended up extending his loan spell, and we got him till the end of the season, and it was brilliant. You had that consistency. You weren't breaking up a back four. Bradshaw made the left full position his own. He was actually a threat going up and down the line. Johnson was excellent at the back. I thought, he was definitely in the running for Player of the Year at that stage. Consecutive clean sheets at home, but again, we were sort of pointing to that. If we're going to lose these players, who's going to come in to replace them? Are we going to hit, lucky with another couple of loan signings? What way is it going to go? But yeah, there was definitely the big fear there that these players are going to go and the quality's going to drop even further then, because we were not in big trouble at that stage, but you were sort of looking over your shoulder the whole time, worried about what was coming behind us.
I'm sure, James, you'll tell me if I'm wrong on this, but after that Drogheda, was it a 5-point gap we had to draw at that stage over them, and we were thinking the great escape, the greatest escape could be on here. I don't want to keep dragging out the full season, but if we take from that point the replacement signings that we got in, and the way we just struggled for form for the remainder of the season, it can't have been easy in camp to go again every time, but you could see a sudden shift, and it's something we mentioned on the pod, and a lot of people come in with it as well. You looked at our recruitment versus what Drogheda were able to bring in, and I know they've got another parent club, and that makes life much easier for them. But I think when we compare and contrast the quality maybe that they got in versus what we got, that's suddenly the gap got eaten up, and we got, obviously eventually fell through the trapdoor of it.
Yeah, James had mentioned Farrell from Shelbourne. We actually we spoke about it when we heard the rumours of him leaving, or whatever Duff had said about him, and we thought, yeah, chicken fillet rolls, and we thought there's a player that might actually come in and be able to step in. We got David, and the one that really that sparked a bit of debate was Akiki. So when Akiki came in, there was a lot of abuse online from Shells fans that this guy should have been kept. He could have been a real player for Duff. So I was my ears had pricked up on the pod, because we got this live on the podcast. So I was like, right, okay, well, if this boy's coming in from under 20s, a couple of bench appearances, this could be a real player. And he looks a real player. But after that, we've young Sean Keogh as well, who came in and played at left back. But yeah, the quality that went to Drogheda, and even at that, to have that gap after that 4-2 win, you can see the difference. We nearly forgot Scott High went back earlier in the season, but yeah, you can't be losing a Zach Johnson, a Bradshaw, and then you're suffering with injuries. Dara Keane never got going. You've Paul Doyle. These people were suffering with injuries. Robbie Benson was out for a period as well. When these players go missing, and you may always come in and be excellent, but you got to get a quality of signing in that's going to get you out of where you were. Now at the time we were doing okay, but then yeah, like you said, Drogheda were the team to watch at the time. Sligo were in it as well around there. Bowes actually fell in, but when you got that quality of player, and Drogheda have decent players. They've got Brian and Deegan, these players, Harry Wood, all these players are, McCann. We also got Harry Wood. Sorry, I Can. Sorry, I'm saying Hayden Can for me. I think he played CDM for a while at Drogheda. Yeah. That's what I thought we were getting him in for. But I mean, again, these are players that we thought were going to benefit us. We've had some decent players in, but you're right, Drogheda got that quality in that just they didn't set the world alight. They got miles away from us, but they just got enough that we just couldn't claw that back. Like we say, we keep giving chance to the team down the line, no matter who we were playing, and we weren't scoring goals. So that was always the issue. Kenny came in, he's done right, he hasn't scored a batter of goals, but we never got that player that we needed. We got players in to fill gaps and create a bigger squad, but we just never got. Now, James might be able to tell us more players we missed out on, but we've missed out on them at the end of the day, and they just haven't. This is what we now find ourselves in, looking down the barrel of First Division.
James, we come that run at the end. If we take our last 11 games, I don't think we got a victory. There was 3 draws in there. You know, goals were definitely a big problem for us. I think we only scored maybe 6-7 goals during that time, but conceded 17. Would that be right? I know you're a man for the stats on one of them.
We weren't hemorrhaging goals at that stage, but yeah, we were still leaking them and not keeping clean sheets. And I think up until Drogheda last week, it was Sean Malloy kept the last clean sheet against Sligo before the break. You know, so that gives you an extent. And when you're not scoring and you are conceding, it's a bad recipe.
Steph, if we sum up that, you know, the whole season, to only have 5 wins in a full season, you know, it really tells its own tale. I hope John Mountney isn't watching on, by the way, for a second and has disappeared. I hope he understands, you know, the pain that we all went through for all of this. We only scored 23 goals in the whole season. We conceded 50. There was a couple of teams who conceded a bit more than us, but you know, I think the closest to us was Galway in 33 goals scored. But when you think they probably had a record clean sheets, I would say, or definitely a record least amount of goals conceded this year.
Clark at 16 clean sheets.
So there we go. So if you're not going to score a lot, you know, don't concede, which seemed to be how Galway got through this season. But when you look back, if you're only scoring 23 but conceding 50, it's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Yeah, like the players think they had a hard playing the games. Like us, we had to come on and talk about it after, you know, try and drag a show out of, you know. But but in serious, like it's always the way. If you're not going to score goals, you're going to struggle. Like, you know, the draws. Even we'd spoken about. Yeah, we'd drawn so many consecutively at home and in the early part of the season. Like, you know, you'd rather win 1 and lose 2 than draw 3. Or draw 2 and lose 1, because you've obviously got more points on the board. But yeah, like, you know, it was just the chances that weren't even being created at that stage that was very, very, very worrying. You know, and Drogheda had just started to pick up points. You know, we all know how good they are at home now at this stage. So, you know, they started climbing up the form table rapidly. Like at one stage, I think they were the form team in the league for a good period. So, like, you know, it was just inevitable, probably what was coming, I suppose. And we were just hoping against hope. And you know, the more it went on, you know, the less likely it was happening. And you know, it was tough for everyone. Like players, coaching staff. Like nothing could turn the tide at that stage. I think it was just bleak. It was just there was no way out of it. It was just loss after loss. You might pick up an odd draw here, and look, we weren't getting hammered out the door in any of the games. It was a goal here or there, but like when you actually analyse the games, like we were being well beaten them. Even if the scoreline didn't suggest it, you know, we were just playing poorly, not creating chances, and yeah, as soon as we conceded, then, you know, we were saying that's the game up nearly, you know, unfortunately for the way it went.
Kieran, with some comments in?
Yeah, one of the comments came in from Daniel just asking, you know, what was the thinking behind the summer window? Why so many players, when we had a dozen or so games left and all the financial problems, masked the proper discussions really about the summer recruitment. And Tony Martin has asked a question about I don't know if we can, but can you give us a recap of who's staying and who's going in relation to this year? And another Facebook user wants to know any pizza tonight.
We might have something we'll announce at the start of the second half for something a little different. James, the retained list, I think it's about 9 players or something.
Yeah, there was 9 under contract for the coming year. Now, obviously, I think Kieran Kilduff has some of them in his mind that he wants to keep, some he doesn't, for example. I'm not privy to who they are, but I mean, the likes of Jamie Gullen would be under contract for next season. I think David Keenan obviously Dervin and Darrell Hogan are committed. Sean Keogh, and just trying to think off the top of my head. I think Jamie Walker is actually one of them. Probably some of the guys in the summer as well. So, but like that, there'll probably be chats with the whole lot of them. So I think as much as there's 9 signed, there's a lot of conversations to be had in terms of do they fit in or do you manager, or do like even wages become a consideration, where are you on too much money for what you're now, you know, obviously there's going to be cutbacks in that regard, so that'll change. But like regarding the summer window, because I know it was mentioned there, I think that was the key point for me, where I think we just got it wrong, and I think in many ways we handed Drogheda their blueprint for what they now became, because we were all focused on, if you remember, we played them back-to-back weeks, and we were all saying, no, the league game's the most important, and
Oh, yeah,
Cup was
that's
the week
right, yeah.
after. But I mean, we beat them 4-2, and young Andrew Wogan had a shocker, God love him, and they went out and put Luke Dennison in goal, and he was a number 2 for most of his League of Ireland career, certainly in the Premier Division, and he just was solid. They also changed for that cup game to the 2 up top with Piero and James Taylor, and that created again that formula, because if you remember, Piero wasn't really scoring.
No.
A beast, but wasn't scoring. Yeah. And then they just found this formula, the bit of extra energy in the middle from Farrell, whereas ours was, and I feel for John Daly, because I mean, there's no doubt he was made maybe assurances over people that didn't turn out to be true or whatever, but like there was a point when he came in at the beginning where we had that back 4 of Davies, Johnson, Boyle and Bradshaw, and it was as good as anything in the league for me, and it probably in his head just needed 1 or 2 little additions. Obviously a striker was needed. Look, we got Josh O'Connor, we barely seen him. I don't know whether he obviously wasn't up to it or whatever in training, but that was the key one. Whereas Drogheda, in comparison, they got Douglas James Taylor in, and he was actually in training with them for weeks ahead of, so he was integrated to the squad as well. Whereas there was a point where, I remember chatting to Andy Boyle, I think he got injured ahead of the Waterford match just after the break, and he missed a few games, and I think by the time he came back, he only missed 4 matches or something, and I think there was something like 7 new players in the team or something, you know, and the back 4 he was playing along with were all new. So like that's how sort of hard it probably was for the players. And you know, to be fair to them, and look, they did go on a bad run at the end, and it's July since we won a match, but and despite everything going on, I think, yeah, you can question quality or whatever, but they all put it in, to be fair. I don't think there was anyone you could accuse of, certainly within the first team anyway, that you could accuse of coasting it or not caring or whatever.
Yeah, it seems mad, lads. We've just gone through pretty much the full season. We've missed out on Shelby's 10-match ban and everything that happened in that. You know, we missed in 8 clean sheets in a row at home at one stage. Yeah, a club record. It's like there was some positives to be taken out of the season. I think when you start listing back everything, we're always going to miss it. It's normally something you get badgered online for as well. So look, we've covered off, I think, enough ground in what was there. Coming up in the second half, we will have club captain John Mountney with us. But as I've mentioned before, we are here in the surroundings of Black Mountin Studios, and we were so lucky to have David Keenan, of course, a big Dundalk FC fan, come in and do 2 songs for us. We're about to play them out in a second. I think David always jumped to notoriety, I suppose, doing his Maxi video that time of El Paso, and we're so lucky to have him in to play that song for us next. But also right after that, there's a fantastic song called Black and White Scarf. Maybe some of the Muja in this town know of that song before, but his rendition of it is fabulous. And it's so good that we're able to integrate a bit of music into our show today. So right after this little break, we will have club captain John Mountney. James, just want to say thanks for joining us. Off one podcast straight on to another.
Like Neil Fed. Won them back again.
I think you thought this was your press conference.
Matthew Tipton was always bad.
So we're going to have a short break here, but during that interval, you lovely people at home will get to enjoy these two fabulous performances from Dave Keenan. And when we come out the other side, we will have John Mountney. See you on the other side.
I was told long ago that you learn more on a building site than you would in school. I don't know who's to know in El Paso. Friday nights, the floodlights, you'd hear us roar. Sing the 10 till we die, and our throats went sore. We have grown on the road to El Paso. Photographs on your mantelpiece, they fade. Sitting at some bus stop in the pouring rain. In your mind, things that you've seen, all the things. There are shoes on the other foot, how does that feel? And if you wanna go, I'll take you there. Feel the rain on your face in the morning air. Let's go back to El Paso. You go around with your tie and your briefcase. Now with a look on your face like I'm a waste of space. Take me back to my El Paso. Take a walk down the Echo Road. I'll be waiting, don't you know? I'll be waiting. And if you wanna go, I'll take you there. Feel the rain on your face in the morning air. Let's go back, take me back to El Paso. You go around with your tie and your briefcase, with a look on your face like I'm a waste of space. Take me back, take me back, take me back. Let's go back to El Paso. To my El Paso. Take me back and let's go back. Take me back and let's go back to El Paso.
I wrote a melody when I was about 15 or 16. So this is Black and White Scarf.
Standing on a rusty bridge, my knees start to shake. I don't want no busted jaw, think about it. For goodness sake, all I have is my black and white scarf. It's covering my face, with my feet surrounded by broken glass. And the only thought in my head was for you, our last. With my knuckles raw and my eyes blood red, with my ribs torn purple for my beloved shed. I was charging, I was screaming, 'cause I was on the lash, wishing I was holding you. Our last, well, last night I told you not to care, love. I wasn't gonna fight them there, no. Now my wrists are cold with them handcuffs wrapped. Oh, I wish I was holding you. Alas, with my black and white scarf, my black and white scarf, my black and white, yeah, it's black and white, we're just black and white, it's my black and white, it's my black and white scarf.
Hello, and you're very welcome back to the second part of this season review. I hope everyone enjoyed the performances from David Keenan absolutely fantastic. I had never heard Black and White Scarf before as a song, and when I heard it, I was just absolutely blown away. Hat tip to Jay McKeown, who actually wrote that before. So I was talking to him on the phone today. No idea you were a songwriter, Jay, and I don't think you did either. So fair play to you. We're joined here in the second half by club captain John Mountney. John, you were sitting on listening to our conversation from the first half. Did that feel like the season you went through, or was it a lot worse for you because you were actually living it?
Living it, yeah. I had to live it a second time there, listening to it back. But no, thanks for having me on, lads. It feels like we're on the overlap here, and beside Keane, Carragher, and Neville. No, it was. It's. You know, I enjoy hearing it from a fan side of point of view, and like he said, you know, they were tough year for us to play in, and then for you to have to dig into the afters of it and you know, speak about it was double punishment. But no, it was. Everyone knows it was a tough year, and like you said, it felt like it was longer than just a season. Yeah,
I meant to just remind everyone at the top of the show there, so if everyone can continue to get their comments in, particularly if you have anything, I suppose, for John Mountney after the really difficult season that he's had to play through. And from those comments, Nita in Dundalk FC has very kindly donated Hayden Cahn's jersey, so we're actually going to give that away tonight instead of our pizza giveaway. So please do get your comments in and interact with us. We'll have a look through those comments at some stage and pick a winner from them. John, I'm going to throw you right away back to the start of the season, and as the recruits were coming in, of course, you were announced as the club captain for the year. What an honour, first and foremost, to be club captain. Did it come as a surprise to you, or like an honour like that? I suppose it can never be a surprise.
Yeah, it was definitely, like you said, it was a massive honour. You know, having played at the club for so long and knowing what it means to so many people, it was a massive honour. You know, I know it was a surprise to a lot of people because I hadn't played the 2 seasons leading up to it with, you know, double cruciate injuries coming back from. But, you know, deep down, I backed myself to come back from it and to prove my fitness. And, you know, I felt like I was at that stage of my career where I was one of the experienced one of the group. So, no, it was an honour, and, you know, it was a proud moment going up to the league launch with Stephen O'Donnell at the time to, you know, we had a lot of ambitions for the year ahead. And I think building up to that, it had been, you know, tricky. You touched on it on the first half of the show. It was a tricky off-season. You know, his hands were tied, couldn't sign players. Lads were telling us they were walking out, and the club couldn't offer them a contract because of the unsurety of the budget and all that. So, you know, I think it was a very tough start in terms of, you know, it was just recruitment was in January and even into February when the season started, and having to go to the UK, the unknown, that channel. You know, it's always a bit unknown, but going back to the start, it was, like I said, it was an honour, and, you know, I just never thought it was going to unfold the way it did from then on.
We talk about from a player's point of view, and we talk about players in, players out. Like for you, some of these were friends and stuff that they've been in the squads for a long time too.
Yeah, friends, of course, you build up connections, but good people as well. And, you know, that was the base of Dundalk FC during the success days was of course good footballers. You know, you have to be good to play at that level, where Dundalk were, but also good people. You know, they would dig you out, you know, and manly as well. So, you know, it was hard knowing they were walking out, and, you know, you couldn't blame them. You know, the unsurety of what was going on and being offered contracts elsewhere. You know, so when you lose that many domestic players before the season starts, it's always tough. Like you said, it's the unknown of who you've signed. Of course, you're on the optimistic side. You know, you're seeing lads in training. You're thinking, yeah, these could be players, but, you know, really it's all about Friday nights when the lights go on, and that's where I think there's a lot more than just the technical side of it. It's your character. You know, what are you about? How do you hold yourself? And you know, and we had so many changes from then on during the season that you know, we never really had any stability with it.
I suppose from our own point of view here, and from the fans, I think you being picked as a club captain makes perfect sense. In only one question around it was always that Archie Davis probably was playing in your most ideal position, and we were worried about how much influence you would have if you weren't on the pitch. I know at times you played higher and you were able to influence that way, but did that ever worry you?
I wouldn't say worry. You know, I had a manager in Stephen O'Donnell at the time who had a lot of faith in me. You know, he'd played with me, and, you know, he brought me to St. Pat's at that time, and, you know, he knows my character and knows, you know, I suppose my good traits I'd have. And another thing was he told me, you know, when you're coming back, you know, just as before he left, when you're coming back, it's not a case of you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You just need to get a few weeks training into you. Don't worry about trying to get in the team. Just get training, you know, and later in the summer you could be in a strong position to start challenging. But that sort of gave me a chip on my shoulder because Archie had been doing so good. It was, you know, I'm better. You know, even though Archie was, to this, my opinion, to this date, he was our most successful signing we've signed from outside the league. You know, Archie didn't put a foot wrong. He was an incredible player. But I suppose the other side was versatile, and it was a case of, okay, if I can't get in right back, I'll get in midfield. If I can't get in there, I'll get in the wing. If I can't, I'll get in anywhere. I'll get in left back, wherever I can get in, I'll try and get in. So that's the mindset I think of as a footballer. You just want to play and want to help the team.
Yeah. Steph, I don't know if you want to come in on this, but like we were talking as well in the first part, the optimism we had from the Shamrock Rovers match in the opening. Like, did you guys feel that it was getting difficult up to the end, maybe of Stevie O'Donnell's? Like, what was that atmosphere like in?
Yeah, maybe it was a little bit different for me because I hadn't played. I think it was the first, let's say, 7-8 games. I only came back the last 2 games before he'd gone, and you know, I had to play Friday, Monday for the Derry, which was a big push in my body. But Archie got sent off the last home game, so I had to. But you know, I wasn't really playing, but I could see what the manager was working towards. It's just time was against us. Like I said, players that come in late. Obviously, personnel, you sign a big, you know, high numbers of players. Not everyone's going to work. You know, there was only how many successful people would you say in that group in total? I don't know. So you know, I could see his ideas and what he wanted to do, and you know, I was fully behind him, and the players were too. And unfortunately, we just didn't have enough quality to bring it through on the pitch and to get results. And you know, that put him under pressure, and that's the side I probably struggle with massively. I know, having gone through the injuries was let's say any sports person would know, when you go through long-term injury, it's mentally tough. But that was, to date, my hardest day in football, was coming in that morning and finding out Stephen O'Donnell and Patrick Craig were gone, because you know, that man, you know, bled for the club. You know, every decision he made was never for himself. There was no ego or anything involved. It was always for the club, for the group of players. He felt what was right. And I had felt personally that it had been let down. You know, we hadn't produced on Friday nights, which ultimately got him that decision, you know, for the owner, Brian, at the time, to get rid of him. But I thought at the time, and I still think it was the wrong decision. It was a bit of a panic press. At the games, I didn't feel there was much of an atmosphere where fans were really coming for his head. It's more the era we're in of social media. The pressure comes on. You know, everyone is online on a Friday night putting their comments out, and I think the pressure got. You know, I suppose it was brought to the owner, but I really don't think, personally, we would have ended up where we have if we'd kept him.
Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, go on.
That's what I was just going to ask. Just when you mentioned because you've obviously connection with Stephen O'Donnell and you've played together, you've won everything together. Was it even like, we as, you know, fans, you know, social media, like you said, there's all this talk and chatter. But was it a shock to the players? We asked James Rogers in the first half, shock to the media. But were the players surprised and caught out by it? Or was there an atmosphere of, lads, we really need to get going here, or these boys are going to lose their jobs? Was that in the background, or is that just football? You've probably been doing that role before, but was it something that kind of caught you off guard after the Derry match?
I think in football in general, anywhere around the world, pressure comes when you're not winning games. And you know, we had a start. I don't know if Dundalk ever had a start like that before. So the pressure was always going to come on. So was I surprised? Yeah, I still was. I still didn't really think it was going to happen. I thought, you know, because of what he had done, you know, his in his managerial career at Pats in that short time, do you know, where he got them, and what he'd done with Dundalk in his first year, overachievement massively, and his hands were completely tied going into signings for the new season. Do you know, I didn't think it was going to happen, so I did. Yeah, I was completely taken back, but you know, the players were fully behind him, and definitely wasn't got right. You know, the group we had, the team we had, it wasn't going to get us over the line keeping that. But I genuinely think if he had been kept for a few more games, or 1 or 2 results that took off the pressure, would have got him to a summer window where I know there would have been lads, he would have got rid of lads, and knowing where he needed to strengthen and what characters he needed to bring in.
Just for yourself, obviously me thinking as a player and you as the club captain, like, how did you try and go about galvanising the players after such a big hit for you personally? obviously to lose Stevie and Pat and everyone else. Like, how did you go about trying to drum up a bit of confidence for the players as the captain?
Yeah, well, I think it wasn't just me. We have a few, very good experienced players that have been around the club and know how the club is supposed to be and you know what we could bring. So there wasn't just myself, but I think I was more angry, to be honest with you, Steph, at the start. I had anger towards the players. I felt as part of it too, we had let them down. So I actually had a lot of anger, I think, the first couple of weeks inside me over because I didn't think it was the right thing. And I thought there was lads that had left, they wanted to go. They weren't good to have around the club. I think they left during the summer, some of them, but I don't think lads cared, which I found it tougher. I was the captain of a lot of group of lads that I don't know if how much this means to them. Now, that's not all the lads. There's some great lads up there, but I mean some of them there. And I found that tough because we'd always had a Dundalk team that there was good people. That something like that should hurt you. So yeah, that was tough, Steph. And then it was just the case. I think Liam Burns was a massive plus for us, all year, to be honest. Behind the scenes, he's been huge. Brian Gartland was there at the time, and two great club men, and they were trying to remain positive. And the reality of it was, that's football. These things happen. We have to, put things right. We have a game to play again next week, so we just had to get on with it. And like that, then we had the two boys looking after us for that period. Then.
Yeah, Kieran, a couple of comments coming in.
Yeah, with plenty of comments coming in now. First of all, just Tony Martin has said, John, we'd love you to stay with your will to win. It's replicated with A. Dervin in midfield. We need more like him, like you. And another comment, which I think is great praise for you, to be quite honest with you, and I think I speak on behalf of all of us, getting the captaincy, it sparked some concerns around fans and even received criticism. He said that he was on the list of critics, but John turned out to be what you want from your captain, a leader, a role model, very genuine. Any questions from the local and national media came his way. Here's hoping you will see John back for 2025. So, there's plenty of praise coming in for you, John, for not only as your role as a footballer, but your role as captain this season.
Yeah, I think that says a lot, and I think when we go throughout the season, John, we'll see you really step into that role. We talked about that night, the surprise appointment of Noel King coming back from the Sligo match. From a player's point of view, when did you first get wind of it, or?
Well, going back firstly to Kieran's thing with the messages that come in, that were lovely messages, but I think that's been a massive thing this year, that I suppose as you maybe get older, you get a bit more sentimental about things, but the beat of Dundalk is the people, the club, and you've seen it when the club was on its hands and knees, that the fans stepped up and picked it back up, and showed how much it matters, and even with us, the results, the fans getting behind us. Yes, you could argue, were we good enough? Were players good enough? Were we good as a group? No, we weren't. But players didn't throw the towel in. Players trained well, and still, carried loud on a Friday that we wanted to try and win games. And I think that was massively, I speak on behalf of the group from last year, that, the appreciation of the fans and the support they've shown us was massive. And, it was just unfortunate it wasn't rewarded in terms of keeping the club up. But, that was where we are. Sorry, back to Noel King. Just like yourselves, I know we had James Rogers on. He probably heard, and you might have heard yourselves before. I was on the phone to Brian Gartland, I think 20 minutes before it was announced, and Brian was telling me the two runners, Stephen Kenny was being approached, and Keith Long had been they'd made contact to Waterford, and I thought they were two very positive moves by the club. And then 15 minutes later, I would help my friend John Jaird. He was doing a bit of farming, so I just called down to say hello, and I went back to my phone. And
it's the most Mayo thing you've said on this podcast.
No, don't get me wrong, I don't do any farming. I'm not that tough, but I was just down visiting my friend, and went back to my phone, and it was missed calls, text messages, and the first thing I done was scroll on Facebook and see Noel King's face, and just couldn't believe that it had happened like that. He's been speaking to the intern manager 20 minutes before that, and he was telling Noel King was never in the run, and that was just impulse, I think, by the owner. He just went about it himself, and that was tough for everyone to take, because then all of a sudden, it was no disrespect towards Noel. I know he'd been in the game for a long time, but I didn't like the fact, and it boiled a bit of anger in me and some of the players too that had been there, that we were a bit of a circus.
Yeah.
We were making a joke of on social media, Dundalk FC, and I was like, this isn't acceptable. And Noel came in and I don't think he opened his mouth for the first 2 weeks because he didn't know players, you know, and that was the reality of it. We were thinking, when's he going to speak? What's going to happen with the teams? What are we doing? There was none of that, and like I go back to Liam Burns was just massive help because he kept everyone tuned in, and it was tough as well for experienced lads because jokes started happening between players, you know, about things that were being said behind closed doors with management, and players are all of a sudden getting involved in this sort of joke. And did you hear what he said to me? Did he hear what someone said to you? And then I'm thinking, like, this can't creep into us that it's a circus, you know. So then obviously you have to step up as older lads and say, like, we row in, like, it doesn't matter who's in charge, it's going to come down to us. And obviously that was just a mad period, and obviously we were worried then when it came out with Noel and his health at the time, and you know, obviously it was just a bit of a mad period for the club.
Yeah, obviously I was just going to jump in then. Obviously, you know, Noel steps away. Is it in the back of your mind that obviously you're speaking so highly of Liam Burns? Are you hoping that he sort of steps up to the role as manager, not on a permanent basis, but maybe, you know, take it on for a couple of games, see how far he goes with it? What was in your head there? Or are you just concentrating on the next match, making sure you're right at training? Where was your head at that stage?
Yeah, I think, Steph, because behind the scenes it a bit of a, that sort of thing had a bit of a laugh, it crept in, or a bit of a joke about us, then it was sort of, right, we have a point to prove. And there was no, I don't think there was that thought of the league. I think clubs and players still took us serious. We had good players there on our day. We were able to put it up to anyone. But no, I was glad to see Liam. We were glad to see Liam step in because, as you know yourselves, his first thing is the club. Do you know what's right for the club? He knows the group of players. He knows the characters that we had there. He had a better opinion than anyone we've had. You know, and I was glad that he stepped in because I knew he could steady the ship. And I think we ended up getting, was it one of our very few wins under Liam in charge, you know, and he might say himself he didn't want the manager role, but he was man enough to know that when he needed to step in and step up to that role. And you know, I can't speak highly enough of him. Even the last day, you know, there's still a lot going on at the club, as we all know, a lot to be cleaned up behind the scenes, but people wouldn't see little details. Like, you're always told to do good, don't look for anything in return, never look for credit. You just do it because you want to. And what was our last home game of the season?
Derry match?
Derry. We have to come in early. Liam Burns is in at 5 o'clock picking up rubbish because there was no rubbish picked up around the ground. That's our manager, our coach, sorry, on the side of the line. No one would see that, you know, and you're walking in, you're seeing him picking up the rubbish, and you just think, like, what a gem we have here. Like, he'd do anything behind the scenes that's because he knows it's right for the club. Do you know, he didn't want fans coming in, seeing the place a mess. You know, so he done that and didn't want anyone to know about it. You know, them small details, you know, even off the pitch, he'd stay behind when Noel Walsh had his hip operation. Liam was staying in the club. We were there at 9 a.m. He might leave till 10 in the night doing washing and drying and all that sort of stuff. So his wife, Eve, is a lucky woman.
Just when you talk about, I suppose, having one manager, lack of clarity on manager, Noel King comes in, you talked about, you know, a certain element sneaking in between some of the players. Is that a real challenge to your captaincy? Like, or is that something you understood, the role and the honour that comes with being club captain, and you know that's the sort of thing that you have to intervene on?
Yeah, I think in any walk of life in your work, you want things to be just done right, you know, and as a captain, you want to look after the pitch. It's basically you demand standards in training, you make sure everyone's there and is tuned in and ready for Friday night, and you make sure people are held accountable, and also you lead by example on the pitch, and that's the main thing, is the Friday night. But obviously the year that there was so much that you never even thought of, that you had to, let's say, think outside the box. And like you said, it was little details. We had, you know, a lot of lads from the UK, let's say, so there was cliques of lads, and it's tough. It was tough for them. They're coming over for leaving their family, and they're living together, and all this is happening in the background. You know, they've never seen the club during the success, so they're only seeing it now. Yeah. You know, so obviously they go home and they're in their little cliques, and you're trying to think how like, we need to make sure everyone is focused, even with everything going on, and you know, that's all you can do, I suppose, is you know, touch base with lads. Like I was saying, you might meet lads for coffee, you might see if everyone's doing okay, you might call over the houses and do little things like that. And then the big thing for us was just the summer. The summer was get to the summer, and we need to strengthen. Really, that was the thought process of, you know, keep pushing on to the summer, and let's get recruitment right.
Of course,
Sorry,
go on.
And just on the recruitment side of things, like as players, you know, we've talked about the lack of goals, but was there talk of, you know, not going to someone and saying, look, we need to get these type of players in, but was there a consensus that we need to get X, Y, and Z sorted before we even think about getting out of a relegation fight, or was it just, let's see what John can do, let's, you know, are we hearing any rumours of potential players coming in, or was it just, let's just dig in? Because the mental side of that, the mental, like, it must have been absolute hell going through that. Like, defeats can be taken, because like you said, during the Kenny years, and we've had massive success, like stupid amount of success. You know, it's crazy that we were even in the situation that we're in. But that mental toll of not having, knowing you're actually missing that type of player that might be able to put that ball in the back. And was there rumours, or was there chat of anybody saying, right, look, we need to go and get this type of player or that type of player? Not a particular name, but was it as obvious, or was it something, you know, social media catches fire with certain things? Which one was it? Were the players thinking of the same thing? We need X, Y, Z sorted quick.
I think we, as a group, sort of knew, what we needed. Maybe the older lads think about it, because really as footballers, you shouldn't have to think about anything bar your football. But obviously there was so much else that we ended up having focus in other areas. And, you know, when Noel King came in, he had pulled a few of us. You know, it was one of them speaking to him in his office, and he'd come directly to us. You know, he was out of the circle of the League of Ireland, and he wanted to know, could we suggest any players, who to chase, things like that. So we had opinions of players and characters, because then it was a realisation, this is where we're at. Like, we are not where we were hoping to be, where we wanted to be. We need to make sure we're stable. The club is stable going forward. So, you know, I personally thought we needed to bring in a few more men. We needed more manliness about us. The window was going to be big for that, down through our core. I know you touched on it already. You look at the difference of windows we had. Now, before I say that, John Daly came in, and John Daly gave us a presence. You know, he had a manager's presence, and it was more like focus on the pitch, you know, your own performances, which was right, and he'd look after all that side. You know, he had a presence, and that was his side, the window and the transfers. But you look at Drogheda, their spine, you know, their keeper came in, Bulger in centre back, big centre half, Farrell from Shelburne, chip on a shoulder, point to prove, midfield, big impact, and James Douglas Taylor up front, banging in the goals. You know, and our window, there was no effect. You know, so that was the big one where I felt we needed to have a manliness, because now all of a sudden we've gone from having a young squad, some good young up and coming players, to we're in a fight. We need men. We need to be dogged. It's not about how we perform now. It's not about style of football. It's about getting us out of the mess. And unfortunately, we didn't have enough to do that for us.
To give John Daly his dues, John, when he first came in, you know, that Pats match, you know, and that 4-2 victory over Drogheda, do you feel if he had been able to hold on to some of the initial loan signings that were available that year, as in the two Zacks and stuff like that, you think we would have been in a much better position? And like, did you feel that the club kind of let him down a touch at that time?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was so much. The picture had just gotten bigger and bigger as it went on, and as John came in, as you know, things just started coming out. What was really going on? How sort of bad a position the club was in. But you know, John came in and he was good. He was very calm presence, and we had a young squad, young players that just needed a bit of guidance. And I thought, you know, he gave that, and there was some good performances, but it comes down to moments. And I'm not a big man on stats, because ultimately you win. Yeah, it comes down to winning a game. You know, it's as simple as that. Who scores the more goals wins the game. But when you look at the stats, I see them online, and it was saying on stats of chances and chances missed, Dundalk would have finished 8 above Sligo and Drogheda. So we did have chances in games. We did have moments. We just weren't cutthroat enough. Let's say in the final third, we didn't take our chances. How many times did we, big moments in games where we go and score, take the lead, that we didn't take them, and then we end up conceding. You know, the other side of it, we give up soft goals. So there was just, it was very small details of, you know, we weren't cutthroat enough in the final third, and we did have too many individual errors leading to goals the other way.
Yeah, John, the season's about to go really pear-shaped in a second. We'll come to that. Kieran, I think we've a couple more comments.
Yep, just one that's come in saying, given all the madness that's come before, I'm feeling optimistic again, given some of the news of the last couple of days. Great show tonight, and keep the faith and come on the town. And then another comments come in saying, after many years of poor club administration, lack of investment in facilities, and where we are, if the club remains in existence and the fans are still worried, then, you know, this may be a huge turning point. We've realised that we need to get involved and contribute even more to support our club and the organisation of major fundraising initiatives such as the Supporters Trust in the 1903 could be the start of a genuine renaissance. we need a huge support for Oriel for our first game back next year. And another one just says, we need characters and players like John to stick around if we're going to come back up for the first time of asking. I hope he re-signs for 2025.
Yeah, so if everyone can keep those comments coming in, as I said, I'll ask Kieran maybe to pick one of the ones.
Don't.
It's too late, you're now assigned. So I'll ask you just to maybe have a look at those comments and we'll pick maybe.
I do have one for you, John. It's a joke one now. I'm just going to ask it. Tupac or Biggie, apparently.
Tupac.
We can't.
Tupac.
Jeez, a man from Mayo talking about Tupac and Biggie. Should have been the Mary Wallopers or David Keenan.
That's the soundbite.
John, obviously you were there in 2012 when everything was, you know, a struggle at the club and Save Our Club and everything at the time. Yourself and Chris Shields, very young, in and around the club then. Did you, like, when everything turned pear-shaped this time, did you feel the club can get out of this? Like when Brian Ainscough came out and we realised there was going to be an issue with wages, when did the panic, I suppose, sit in with you and the players?
Yeah, it was totally different in terms of I was 18. The first year it was just the purity of football. Do you know, I was just happy to be playing with a club like that at the time in the Premier Division and getting matches. And obviously the second time around then was a total different. You know, it was a lot bigger mess behind the scenes. So it was definitely tougher. You know, this time around for everyone involved. But you know, there's still part of me that's like, how did it come to this? You know, sorry, I'm getting dazed with the question, but it does. There's part of me that comes like, how did it come to this? It all just felt like it was coming up, but none of us knew about it, and then all of a sudden it just unraveled completely. Do you know? Yeah. So I've even lost track of the question.
Well, let me ask you this then, John, because it's not a situation that any player is equipped for, let alone being a club captain at such a struggling time at the club. We've heard you mention before the players had come to you because they were querying what we do. Like some players were in a bad position at this time.
Oh yes, that side of it, the uncertainty was it was real. Do you know, the wage situation. You know, players who had missed the week, missed the 2 weeks. That was all the talk. Are we getting paid? And obviously, as it unravelled, there was bigger bills. You know, coming. You know, players had accommodation and different things, and we're getting calls from landlords, and landlords calling down to houses saying, you know, you're out of here. I'm missing last month's rent. If next month's rent's not here, you know. So that was where that came out of in terms of went down to the lad's house and just to sit down outside the club because it's such turmoil up there. Everything was so negative. It was more to sit down and see how lads were doing. And you know, like I said, lads are away from home. They're young. A lot of the lads we brought in were young lads, and the uncertainty of not receiving wages and then getting calls from landlords and different things. It definitely mentally took their toll on lads. I know that they definitely found it tough. I was in a different position. I was an older lad. I'm married, living with my wife. I have our daughter, so my mind's occupied as well going home. That's by priorities, but for them, they're living away and they can't get away from that side of it. So yeah, it was real worry during that time. And I think to give credit to the owner, John, when he came in, he sat down and spoke to us, and he spoke openly, very openly about what was going on at the club, and he gave us his word on the wages. And I know things might have been a day off here and there, but from that moment on, he stuck to his word, and the wages were produced. Be a week behind it, they were produced until the end of the season, and that was a big thing. He was trying to avoid the club going into that SCARP operation, which is massive. And I don't know what's happening at the minute. Hopefully they can still avoid it, for the point system next year to try and come up straight away. But he stuck to his side of it. He stepped up, and wages were covered, and it was up to us then to try and do our part. And unfortunately, like we spoke about, we ended up in this position. But there was so much more. There was a lot going on behind the scenes at the club. Players were also, like I said, as a captain, you're trying to keep it pure, keep this side away. But, we came into training after training for food. We had rock salt. Danny was looking after us, for food, and it came out of players' wages, so much a week, that would cover the food. You train hard, you go in, have your food in the gym, then you're ready to work hard again. And, the food was all being taken away one day, and we were like, what's going on? And it was told that there was an outstanding bill not paid, and we were like, how is this possible? We're the ones, there's meant to be wages, money coming out of our wages to cover this. And, then I think we realised then, where we were at, and obviously the thing with our kit man Noel was told he could leave, and there was just things creeping in. It was, though our wages were being covered, it was really showing it was dark times, at the club towards the end.
I think all of us as fans, that Sunday night, the announcement, that Brian Ainscough had put that 5 p.m. deadline on the Monday onto the club, and all the fans turn up outside Oriel Park. You were there with some of the other players. It was a weird atmosphere that day. The lack of clarity coming out of what was going to happen. Did the players kind of feel and fear that this could be the end, liquidation, and we're all going elsewhere?
Yeah, I think exactly that. Lads were, the conversations were, questions were being asked, of course, the older lads, what happens, what's the reality? And at the time, Stephen McGuinness came in from the PFEI, which gave great clarity for lads in terms of if the club goes down any of these routes, this is where you stand, which was massive, because it was questions we couldn't ask as players, and it was a very dark time, because if it went into liquidation, whatever about lads losing their contracts, people lose their jobs. So if you lose your job, you lose your job. You have to go and find a new one. That's just the reality of life. But the bigger picture of the club, the history, they just would have been devastating for the whole town and for everyone of Dundalk. So, I think we were all just so relieved that the club was able to stay afloat, and John Temple came in and kept it afloat to now. And I think that's why, maybe that's part of the reason why the fans gave such a good reception to the players, because they were just thankful that they still had their club and still had their ground to go up on a Friday night and get behind.
I know, just for myself, I obviously went up as well, but it was refreshing to see the players going there as well. It just showed, all the trouble they were going through at the time, to come and actually support the fans instead of the fans actually supporting them at the time, just to show that togetherness, I suppose. And like Chris said, it was probably a bit of a weird atmosphere, because you were still, you seen the news reporters coming interviewing yourself, and John Daly getting interviewed, a couple of fans, but you're still in limbo at that sort of stage. So just as fans, we were worried, and I can't imagine what it was like as a player. But did you feel a sense of anger and let down by the people in charge, that obviously, you agree a contract at the start of the season and you expect it to be honoured? Like you said, you have a young family, mortgages to pay obviously as well. So did you get that sense of anger, or was your mind just elsewhere at the time?
I don't think it was anger with that one, Steph. I think it was more emotional, the emotional attachment side to it, because like I said, we play football and we're blessed. Our job as footballers, though you're not making life changing, if a contract's pulled, like our contract's actually finished now, you need to find work to survive. That's the reality. But it's a privileged position. We're getting to play football, something you love doing. So it's like no one else. If it gets pulled from you, that situation, you just have to find work elsewhere and have to work hard and get your head down and try and get somewhere. But I think that side of the fans and players, I think it was important for players to go up to see, this is how much, you put on this jersey. I think it's the big thing about Dundalk is players that sign here, that live here. It's to really get involved with the town and the people, because you realise it's such a good town in terms of the characters of Dundalk. You've some laugh, go up to Panama or anywhere in town and have your coffee. You'll always end up having a chat with a few fans, and you can see the passion of fans, and that's how it was important for players. They see it on a match night, but when you're living there, to be around it and to go up to the club and see, listen lads, this isn't just affecting us. Look at how many people that live and die for this. Joanne, there was a lot else going up with the club, and it put things in perspective. Obviously Maxi, what happened with Maxi too was so tough for Maxi's family, his friends, the club, us as players that knew him. I think that's why this year is as tough as it's been on the pitch, and where Dundalk is going to be now going into next season. I think the positive side was that togetherness you said, and that side, I really felt proud to be part of Dundalk for that reason this year. There was a real togetherness for all the tough times that threw themselves at us this year.
John, I'm going to just ask you about that time of Maxi's passing. I mean, I can only imagine, you're someone who, I'm sure, ear has been burned off plenty of times by Maxi, with always something positive to say, but he'd pull you aside and he'd like to give you some words of wisdom or something for it. It's probably hard for you to describe to the current crop of players what Maxi's actually like. how big of a character he is, how big of an influence he has over fans and everything else. Like, to lose someone like that at a crucial stage for the club, like it just felt like when we were down, we were after taking another kicking. And I think like you mentioned it there, Steph, for the 5 o'clock deadline. But like I think when we seen the players lining the pitch, lining outside Oriel Park, lining outside the church and everything, I think at that time we definitely got a feeling that you guys understood that we're all hurting here. We're hurting that we've lost a massive person in Maxi. We're hurting where the club is at the moment. It must have been I don't think I've ever been in a situation like that before. But like, have you ever seen a send-off that Maxi got that day? Like, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was tough times, like you said, for everyone, and such a great character, Maxi. Like you said, bumping into him in town, he always had stories for you, and plenty of crack. But it was tough. I mean, I was only speaking to Maxi a couple of days before his passing, and he was talking about bringing Maxi's taxis back at the time, and I was telling him, get the Mary Wallopers on and let me know. I'll still go in the boot if I have to hear them singing live. But he even came up to the club a couple of days before it as well, and he spoke to the players after training. He came onto the pitch, and I remember I was buzzing off it because I thought, like, this is what players need to hear. Like, this shows, some of them probably think, this man's mad, who's this fella, but I was saying, this is brilliant. Like, this is someone showing, this is what it means to the town. He was speaking, and told him how much he loved the club, and how much it means to him, and how proud he is of us, and keep fighting, and we'll keep backing you. It was a lovely message he sent. And out in my car, I still have it. I don't know what to do with it. It'll make you emotional thinking of it, but he came onto the pitch and he gave us an envelope, and it said, to Dundalk FC. He handed it to me, he said, you're the captain, and he gave it, and it said, to Dundalk FC, from Maxi, from the Cavaliers, and it was 50 euros in it. And we all know Maxi would, he'd give you the clothes off his back, and I was speaking to his brother since then, and he said, he didn't even have the change in his pocket for a coffee that day. He found the 50 euro he had in the house to give to us. And it just showed, I felt, to the players and to everyone how much it meant to Maxi. I still have that in the car, so I just think that was a tough time for everyone involved. It really was, and I think the players did really, see that side of how important the club is to the people, to the family, and like you said, the send off he got was the nicest send off I've ever seen. It was honestly, it was magic, and you said it yourself, Steph, when his voice came over the speakers in the stand towards the end. It was honestly, it was powerful.
Yeah.
We were talking about the send off. Jim McLaughlin had passed away as well, and even someone like legendary status of Jim, like that we said we were there that day. Just what you said, John, when his voice came over that Tannoy, I don't know, was Mickey Duffy there today, or I don't know if it was Mickey or
Mickey Duffy.
Mickey,
but it was just like there was an incredible silence, but it was a deafening silence. I've never heard anything like it at Oriel Park. We mentioned Jim McLaughlin as well in the weeks previous, but it was just, and we were obviously at the church. We didn't really know what to expect going up to the club, but it was an incredible moment. And given everything, John said, everything that you've gone through, it's moments like that where you think, right, we can get out of this. You gotta, for everything that's gone on this season, the fact that we're able to come back and play and have a chance to do, whether it's a point deduction, whatever it is, at least we go back to the first game of the season. We're back in February, March, pre-season, whatever it may be, with hopefully players, like we don't know who we're going to get, but we're hoping, Kieran and the staff that come in. But it's moments like that you think, imagine this had all went at 5 o'clock deadline. This is just, like, it epitomises what the town is about and the club. And like John rightly says, players wouldn't have known Maxi, new players coming in wouldn't have known him, but to have someone like that come in and speak to you and done what he done, it galvanised everyone. And that's what you want the club to succeed for. People like that integrated into the area. And look, the players are hopefully bought into it, and you want to see now go to next year. But moments like that are key to any kind of football club.
John, the run to the end of the season was tough. There was hardly anything in a game. It was like a kick of a ball. We were like one goal off, actually pulling something off here. We just could not get that win. It seemed though to give us a real fighting chance at the end.
Yeah, I think amongst ourselves, we'd spoken as a group of players, and it was, now is the time. It's actions. There was plenty of talking and different times of the year, and we'd have meetings and. How to try and get that little bit extra out of ourselves or get ourselves over lines in games. And the big thing was, right, let's mini league 10 games. And that was the sort of way we were trying to approach it. How many points can we get? Because we know on our day we can compete with any of the teams and we can get results. We've shown, away to Derry, we drew, home to Rovers. We can beat teams. And and it just seemed to kept fizzling out. You know, it was we were saying 8 games left, 7 games left. Then it was a case of, right, lads, it's a cup final. Friday night's a cup final. Like, you know, it's a must win, and we just weren't picking up. And it does. You don't lose it the last game at Derry. You know, it's lost in all the games before that. We just didn't pick up enough points. So, you know, ultimately everything that went on behind the scenes and on top of us on the pitch wasn't good enough to get us, to keep us up. And like I said, from that time we played Drogheda at home and bet them 4-2. That was a massive turning point for them. They changed. They went to 3 at the back. They got rid of. They shortened their squad. I think they got rid of a lot of their numbers. Had a small squad. You know, I felt we should have been the same. Lads should have been, let's say, go young lads, stay away for this period. This is where we just need a small group of men fighting for the same thing. And like I said, we you can look into a lot of details, but we weren't good enough. You have to. Most of the talk is about what happens behind the scenes, but you have to, you know, hold your hand up too and have accountability as well amongst yourselves. And really, did we do enough on Friday nights to get us over the line? No, we didn't.
I think the scenes at the final whistle on that Derry match, though, and the reaction you got from the shed that night, like, we're a relegated team. You'd think the fans would be baying for blood, but it wasn't that at all. Were you expecting that reaction?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if we deserved all year the reaction we got, because any other club you look at, it's result based. You know, if a manager's not producing so many games, they get sacked. You know, you can't get rid of players, but to have that many losses in a row and to be given that standing ovation, I think that's where I think the whole year come into play. The fans were just so happy to have their club. You know, like you mentioned, Sonia Oy, Jim McLaughlin, Maxi, you know, and all different big people that we lost in the town during the year, and obviously a lot more. I think people were just, you know, put things in perspective of having our club and having our team, and I suppose they looked at us and seen that we were trying. There wasn't no one throwing the towel. Everyone trained, and everyone was held accountable to train well and to play. You know, give everything, and if everything wasn't good enough, you know, we can take that, and you know, that side, I don't know if we deserve that, but that's a credit, like I said, to the people of Dundalk, the way they carried themselves through this year and finished off the year. Even the support at Drogheda away, I remember thinking, will we have anyone down there? But they still showed up and filled the away section, because they probably thought, you know, we're never showing our faces down the Drogheda that we're down. Do you know? So that speaks a lot about for the people.
I think it's probably just echoing what you're sort of saying, but the combination of a lot of, you know, setbacks, but the fact of the players, like, we've been probably beating the drum all year that, you know, you can't fault any of yous for effort or endeavour or playing for the jersey. Just might have fallen short in certain areas, but just the way that you carried yourself personally, I think we are full of admiration for. It's not just because you're on the show tonight. but yeah, like, look, as the captain, you know, they talk about captains, you know, having a different role these years, but, you know, you really stood out in front and were leading the fight. So, you know, it was great to see, but then, you know, you were heartbroken at the end when it was actually confirmed, and I think every single one of us was in your shoes at that sort of stage, you know, but you could just sense, you know, your feeling towards the club. So I suppose it's probably like, you know, we want to bottle that up and, like, you know, give it to some of the young lads who might be coming through. But obviously, if they're seeing the leadership you've shown, you know, throughout the season and the seasons before that, if they can just take a little bit of that, they'll be a much better player, obviously, and then a better person as well. So I think it's been a credit to you this season how you've carried yourself off the pitch and on the pitch through difficult times, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Steph.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. But like that, it's hard to see any positives, you know, from a year, because I was glad to just play so many games, having been out for so long and not pick up injuries. But at the end of it, it's hard to just look past where we ended up. You know, it's hard to take any positives from the year. But I think that is a side for any young lads or any footballers or in general and anything. I think you have to be all in, especially with sports. If you want to be part of something, you have to be all in, and you have to emotionally put yourself in, and you have to be vulnerable. And, you know, the rewards, if you're on the right end or at the right, you know, things are done right. You know, the rewards of how high those highs are you'll never get that anywhere else in life. And obviously this year was I felt the other side of it. You know, where you're emotionally all in and you come out the wrong end of it, and of course it's heartbreaking. And like you said, I think we were all just you know, gutted. It was coming. It seemed like it was coming, and then obviously when it does come, it's just so hard to accept, and it still is hard to accept. And I know I'm sure you'll touch on it, Chris. You know, going into next season, and there's so many positives I can see at the moment, but you know, like I said, that the finish to the year is just hard to swallow.
Yeah, I was a bit worried.
Go ahead.
Sitting beside you, I thought, Chris, because obviously we were here 12 months ago at the Player of the Year Awards, and you hadn't played much, and I was sort of saying, you know, is your future going to be at Oriel Park or not? And you're probably looking.
Well, you better ask him again this year.
Yeah. We're not,
That's the question everyone has, John.
Obviously, look, it'd be great if you'd be able to give us an update just where you're at the minute. Obviously, I don't think any Dundalk fan would want to see you leave the club, but obviously personal situations and whatever. But if you've any sort of an update for us.
Yeah, well, there's no real update as such. I suppose my thing last year, like you said, and everyone had their opinion on me, and they were rightly so. I'm a man who hadn't played much football. You know, I signed a very small contract this year just to keep the mortgage afloat, and obviously the pictures has changed. We have our little daughter Lenny now, myself and Shannon, and she's out of work, you know, minding Lenny. So, you know, I'm in a position now where I need to make sure I'm looked after. Do you know what I mean? I need to. The mortgage is, unfortunately, I signed one of them variable ones. Is it? That's doesn't seem to be going anything but up. Yeah, I got. But no, like for me, it's always been about the love of football, and the hardest thing this year was being involved in something that wasn't done right. That was the hardest thing, and like anyone, you just want to be involved in something that's done right. So you know, I'd be lying if I told you I don't have options. I'm in a lucky position. I have options, and it's a case of just weighing it all up and seeing what's the best for myself to do, and of course I have to think of the family as well, and you know, it's going to be a tough time to take it all in, because like that, you know, I have such an emotional attachment to Dundalk, so you know, like that. And I had mentioned as well about next season, you know, regardless of who's there, I know Darryl Horgan is already in contract, and Dervin and Ed are good. He'll be a good player for Dundalk next year. There's a lot of good young lads, you know. Sean Keogh has come on the scene, left back. Young Luke Mulligan probably didn't get much playing time because I was playing right back. Another very good young lad coming up who's made of the right stuff. You know, you've Maiwa, you have a lot of young lads even that were coming in the end of the season. Who do we have? We had young Sean Spade from Dundalk. Callum Woods came in, TJ Malloy. Now they're young for next year, but them lads need to be tied into contract because they've promising futures ahead. And there's a lot of youth, and there's a lot of positives for Dundalk for next year. And Kieran Kilduff, I know a lot of fans will be familiar with him from as a player, but I remember one of the traits he has is he's selfless. I remember as a player, if Dave McMillan was playing up front ahead of him, he still trained right, and he was ready to come off the pitch, come off the bench as he did in some games, and massive moments for Dundalk, and that's what he's like. And I think he'll bring the right people in with him. He'll want everyone to be pure. He'll want it just to be football ran. So I was excited when I heard Kieran Kilduff's coming in, and I think, you know, if depending on what's going on behind the scenes, if he's given the license to go and get, you know, a couple of players, I think Dundalk could be in a strong position football wise to bounce straight back. And obviously the big thing is just for John Temple behind the scenes. He's a lot of work to do behind. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I said that, because I know it's a lot of doom and gloom with last year what it was, but I think with Kieran Kilduff coming in and the youths coming through, there is, and you know, like I said, Darryl and good players already signed. There's a lot of positives for Dundalk for next year.
When you said you have a couple of options there, could one of them still remain here?
Yeah, Dundalk is of course. I'm glad to say that Dundalk. I've spoke to the club only today. You know, and that option is there, and I'm grateful that I have that. And like I said, now it's just a case of what's realistic for me, and what I can do to keep that variable mortgage afloat. And hopefully Shannon will get back to work in the new year. But no, it is my picture's changed, and it's never been about anything for me. It's always been any of my contracts. You know, owners that have been there before would know from what I've signed on that I've always been just pure football, and it's signed on that. Once I'm able to survive, you know, I'm all in. So now it's just a case of stepping back. I'm going away, and myself, Shannon and Lenny are going away on a summer holiday. However that'll go, I don't know, but we're going away for a week, and then it's a case of coming back and switching off for a week, and then coming back and seeing what's right for me to do.
Kieran, have we any more comments?
Plenty of comments, just plenty of praise for you, John, but one of the comments just says Oriel needs to become a fortress again for next season. Every team will be looking to get a scalp against us, as John said. we need a strong midfield, a physical spine for the team next season with with youth, loads of energy, and just a couple praising you. You know, best captain we've ever had, and Dundalk would be a lot worse off this year if Mounts wasn't about. Simple as that. And no matter what the results, brilliant leadership from our captain, and he should be the captain in 2025. And yeah, John, like there's plenty more coming in, and they all just say the same. They're really praising you from a height, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of us here that we just feel the exact same.
Thanks, Kieran. Yeah, nice words. Thank you very much. Well, thank you.
Good luck picking the winner out of that, Kieran.
Do you know who that is? That's my mum, my auntie, my cousin, my brother.
What's the address on these?
Shannon.
It's not Shannon.
Yeah, and just from myself, obviously you've reached out to me as part of my work with Head in the Game, and you wanted to make a small donation towards, obviously there's a player's kitty at the end of the season or whatever way you do it, and you wanted to donate it to charity, and you obviously picked Head in the Game. But before we do that, I just want to present you with a Head in the Game jersey, just as a mark of, you know, every value we stand for in Head in the Game, your mental toughness, you know, how you looked after others when they were feeling down. So if you just want to accept that.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and
thank you.
We've Aidan Larkin and Orla Taff here to just, you know, you're presenting the cheque to them, I suppose.
He's giving it back to me, is he? Or? Cheers, thanks very much.
You'll be looking
thanks
for
very much.
this holiday coming up, but yeah, no, look, it's greatly appreciated. This money will obviously go. We've touched on Maxi obviously a little bit, and your connection with him, and for you to reach out on behalf of the players as well to donate this money towards us is just an incredible gesture, especially with the wages trouble you've been having throughout the season and different things like that. So look, this will go a long way to helping many people. So we just want to greatly thank you for it. Yeah,
no, thanks very much, Seb. I think the point that was it was the group of players. You know, like I said, we had the kitty there, and it was what was the right thing to do. And everyone, you know, credit to all the players and the older lads. It wasn't myself. It was everyone. And you know, we just wanted to put it to a good cause, and what you're doing with the Head in the Game is brilliant, especially for the year we had, and obviously before with Harry, with Orla's dad as well. So it's to something close to our hearts as well. So thanks very much as well, and thanks for the t-shirt, lads.
Yeah, you can wear it on holiday. No, really appreciate it.
And thanks for all the compliments, because I'll tell you why, because I plenty of stick over the years on this show, have I?
That was all from Steph.
Yeah, that was all from me.
Does the dynamic change slightly with Kieran coming in as manager? Someone obviously you've played with. Could that be an extra factor to help twist your arm, do you feel?
Yeah, I definitely think it. Like I said, I think it's a positive move for the club. I think it's someone that's young. He's hungry. He's already had experience with at Loans Women and had success. But I just know the main thing behind it, not even about experience, is about character, the characteristics, and he ticks a lot of boxes. You know, he's young and he's hungry. I know he'll probably be sacrificed, and he's a lot of sacrifice himself to come here. But he wants to come for the good of the club, and I'm sure he'll want to have that purity about it of just strictly football. And I hope Liam Burns as well is involved going forward, because like I said, I think he's a massive part of it. When things were low last year, Liam was the one lifting lads up all around the club and doing so much. So I think it's very positive for that side of it next year. And like I touched on, the young lads, and obviously then if you have your few experienced lads or a few other lads around that, you know, it's definitely positive. And Dundalk's too big of a club to be in Division 1, so I hope that he does get the backing to which is the big thing, was getting a manager straight away, I thought, and they've done that. You know, and like I said, that gives him a chance to get his squad assembled, and like that, it just hopefully Dundalk bounce straight back up, because Dundalk needs to be in the Premier Division.
Yeah, John, look, we just want to thank you so much for coming in here tonight. We appreciate your honesty. We appreciate the endeavour and the hardness you've shown all season. You really encapsulated exactly how us as fans and this whole town have felt throughout the year. It's very rare you get that in a player at a club who actually gets everything that Dundalk Football Club is about. So we just want to say we really appreciate it, and that's definitely another reason to be here next year. That's the sort of guidance we need. Kieran, I'm thinking the first one that blew all the smoke up John's rear end is a good one to maybe have a winner.
Which one?
Oh, sorry, there was that many.
Which one? There's that many, yeah.
Which one? There was that many. There's just. Yeah. Just it says Facebook user. That's the problem with the system this evening. So it says Facebook user, but it's in relation to, you know, your captaincy. Sparked some criticisms, but I've been aware of a lot of critics have turned out leader and role model, genuine questions. Local national media came his way. Here's hoping you back for 2025. That's our winner for this evening. So if that person can get in contact with us on the town end, we'll get that jersey sent off to you over the next couple of days. But yeah, it's been a great night, and thanks very much to John and James for coming in this evening and for everybody's comments back home.
Brilliant. Well, look, that is going to bring us to an end to the show tonight. This has been amazing. You boys got a handy tonight.
We let the professionals do it. We're the talent. We just sit back and let the professionals at it.
We just want to thank again Mark and all the guys here at Black Mountin Studios as well for these fabulous facilities. David Keenan, obviously, as well, for the music that we've had. And he is going to go out with an extra little special one that I will announce in a second. I want to thank all the crew that's helped here, our camera operators, Kevin directing, the guys from Heading the Game from being here as well, Kieran filling in, with a lot less whiskey over there tonight. I want to thank James Rogers in the first half, obviously John Mountney this time. These two heads for a long season. We've made it through another one, 4 seasons down. You have to keep going.
Yeah, sure, there's no point stopping now. We'll do a first year in the first division. We might look at. We'll see what that's about.
Just like John, I have a few options as well. So few weeks to wait and see if the money's right.
Well, look, we just want to thank everybody as well for listening in, for the comments coming in. It's been fantastic all season long. We've enjoyed it. The highs, the lows, the real lows, the turning around the other end, and the optimism for the future ahead. To play us out on the show tonight, something that's echoed around Oriel Park, in particular this season, is a Three Little Birds song. So we've got a real special way to play us out tonight, and that's Dave Keenan's very own version of Three Little Birds. And from ourselves here on the podcast, come on the town.
On the town.
Rise up this morning, shine with the rising sun. 3 little birds pitched by my doorstep, singing sweet songs, melodies pure and true. Hear them saying, this is my message to you, fella. Now don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing is gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, shine with the rising sun. Those 3 little birds still pitch by my doorstep, singing sweet songs, those melodies pure and to wish. Hear them singing, this is my message to you. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing's gonna be alright. Don't worry about a thing, because every little thing's gonna be alright. Rise up this morning, rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Hear the 3 little birds sitting by my doorstep, they're still singing sweet songs, melodies pure and true, singing, this is my message to all of you. Don't worry about a thing, worry, don't worry, don't worry.